Welcome to Part 6 of the McIntosh MC2105 Restoration Series. In Part 1, we learned about the history of McIntosh and some details about the MC2105 amplifier we're restoring. In Part 2, we recap the power supply. In Part 3, we recap the input board. In Part 4, we replace the thermistors, the input capacitors, and recap the driver and meter boards. And in Part 5, we tested the capacitors we removed and powered up the amp for the first time since we began the restoration. If you missed those episodes, you may want to go back and check them out. If you saw Part 5, you know we ended that episode with some undiagnosed problems with distortion and the level controls. Let's pick up where we left off. I took the potentiometer for the right channel apart to see what was going on, and sure enough, the resistive track is falling apart. You can see here's a piece, very, very delicate. And you can see this is supposed to be black all the way around, and we've lost it. The neutral control cleaner that I used should have been fine. This stuff is supposed to be saved for plastics. If you come across these potentiometers, do be careful when trying to clean them out. Maybe actually take them apart and just gently clean them with the Q-tip. I did order 2 more level controls, and even though the left one appears to be fine, we'll need to replace both of these. I do have another 250K audio potentiometer with an audio taper. This is 250K. It's not going to work permanently, doesn't have the right shaft. But I think what I'm going to do is just for testing so we can move on and try to diagnose some of the other problems with this amplifier. Just tack these leads onto this potentiometer so we can use the amp that way until the new ones arrive. So I'm going to go ahead and desolder these and just quickly solder them onto this replacement here. Let me just clip these leads off, keep those strands together as much as possible until we really need to resolder this to the final potentiometer. So I'm just going to clip this one off here. And then our ground. Just a quick and dirty hookup there. Again, this is just temporary, but that'll hold for now. Okay, I've got the temporary potentiometer hooked up here, and I've got the unit powered on. I've just added this red wire here to connect the body of the potentiometer to the chassis to just reduce the noise that's being created. Let's turn up our volume on our right channel and hear what we have. Okay, so now we have a very nice smooth action. And the right channel sounds just fine to me now that we've cleared up the potentiometer. Let's go back now and listen to our left channel where I had noticed that the potentiometer was fine, but I was hearing some distortion. Let's turn up the left. That distortion cannot be heard through the headphones. So that tells me it's not the potentiometer. If you heard a scratchiness like that, you would be wise to think perhaps that was the potentiometer. After all, the one for the right channel was bad. Why not the left one? However, again, as I'm not hearing it through the headphones, that tells us that it's not the potentiometer. So I played around a little bit and kind of followed the signal path, and I discovered something. Tell me if you noticed this. This is the switch that activates the speaker. Watch what happens. Seems as though if I bounce around the switch a little bit, I'm able to clear that up. See that? Temporarily. Okay. One wire in particular. You can also hear that it's a little bit microphonic, some of these wires that I'm tapping. Okay, and there's one particular wire, you can't see it, it's a purple wire. But if I hold that down, seems to clear up the problem. Okay, so clearly I don't think there's anything wrong with the circuit. I think we just have another problem here with these front panel controls. First with the right channel potentiometer, and now with the switch. So I'm going to resolder some of these points on this switch, and maybe even take it apart, get a better look, and try to figure out what's going on there, see if I can clear that up. And I'll get back to you when I discover the problem. Okay, here's a close-up view of the switch in question here, the speaker selector switch that I believe is contributing to that distortion we were hearing on the left channel. I double-checked all the soldering connections and everything looks fine. I don't see any cold solder points or any loose connections whatsoever. But I did squirt a little neutral control cleaner into the switch and, turned it back and forth many times in an attempt to clean it out. So let's see if that doesn't fix the problem. Okay, I've got the switch activated. Let's turn up our left channel now and see if we hear that distortion. Ah, much better. Much better. And here's our right channel. Much better. So there you go. Let's see now if I tap this, if I'm hearing any noise. Nothing. Okay, so I think that cleared that up. So we fixed the problems we were having with the amplifier, and I'll just need to wait for the potentiometers to come in to replace the two level controls. The new level keys I ordered just arrived from DigiKey. Here's the information on the package if you're interested in finding a replacement potentiometers for your MC2105. I'll show you here. These are not expensive. You shouldn't be paying more than, $5 or $6 or so for these potentiometers. I will caution you, there are people on eBay selling replacement potentiometers for McIntosh equipment at exorbitant prices, so buyer beware. These things are readily available and there's no reason to pay those types of sums. One thing to notice, however, is that I wasn't able to get quite the correct post. As you can see, the original potentiometers have a slotted post where this has a knurled and split. You can attempt to break off one end of this to fit into here. You can see that's slotted, but that doesn't quite work. Let me show you. What you end up with is something like this. I've split one in half here, and it really doesn't work very well. As you can see, it's not a tight fit. I'm going to attempt to remove the insert by breaking away this glue and then see if we don't have a better fit with these new potentiometers. Okay, as you can see, I have both volume controls operating smoothly now. The right-hand level potentiometer is the new one that we've installed, while the left one is the original. I am going to replace this original now as well, just to make sure that both level controls track the same. I've removed the knurled shaft insert from another knob and took this piece out, which has the knurled area around it, drilled out the knob so this insert would fit. And that goes like that. And now our knob fits on very well. Now I'm still you'll notice that I can continue to turn this knob all the way around. I'm not worried about that just yet, because what we'll do is when we're done and everything is working fine, we're going to glue this insert into this knob so that that no longer happens. Let me show you what I did exactly. We'll run through all the steps and we'll now do the same for the left level potentiometer. Let's start by removing the old potentiometer for the left-hand channel. Okay, just put our hardware back on there to keep it together. Did not give us a lot of room to work here as far as the cable length, so it's going to be a little tight working in here. Okay, now I'm just going to mark the cables going into the potentiometer to remind us what goes where. This is our negative shield, obviously. I'm just going to put that there, red, and we'll use green to mark the middle. Let's just take a look at how the orientation will be for the replacement potentiometer. You can see the old one and the new one, and we'll mark things the same way. Red to number 3, green for the middle position, number 2, and our shield will obviously be black. And we can easily confirm all these connections by looking at the circuit and checking the schematic, but why bother? We'll just mark them with color codes so we don't have to go through all that trouble. We'll just make our switch as easy as possible. Okay, let's remove our first cable. Now again, we don't have a lot of cable to work with, so I'm trying to make sure that we can use the existing exposed metal on these wires. If these pieces breaks and we have to strip this wire and cut it back, we're going to have to resort to an all new cable. So let's try to prevent that and use the existing wire. Let's remove our middle terminal. Alright, we've got that one out of the way. Just going to use the soldering iron here to warm the tinned wire down a little bit. Straighten it out. Got my finger there a little. That wasn't pleasant. You know, when we're installing wires or components in circuit, you know, we all kind of want to twist the leads a bit so it has a good physical bond before we solder. But you can see what kind of trouble it creates when you're trying to actually service this stuff years later. Those bent wires can be very difficult to straighten and make servicing a bit of a pain. But nonetheless, I still find myself twisting leads over all the time. There's just something satisfying about twisting a lead and bending it around something to make sure it's got good contact. Okay, there we go. Let's see if we can't clean up this mess a little bit here. Oh, look at that. The tip on the desoldering iron seems to have broken. Alright, let me pause things for a second, investigate what's going on with that. Okay, yeah, that tip broke right off. These are longer tips now on these new Hackos, and they're kind of nice because they really get in there. But apparently that added length allows you to put a little more leverage on there than maybe is best, and so that's broken right off. Why don't we just keep working on cleaning up these wires here. I'm just going to try to straighten things out a little bit here. You'll notice on the old one, the terminals were bent down. That's because it's a little tight in here. These terminals, when these are installed, come very close to that. So it is necessary to bend these down. They also did install some electrical tape on the housing of the old potentiometers to make sure there's no shorts. So let's start by bending over our terminals. Very carefully. Okay, there's our first shield, and this is our middle wire. And yeah, this one I am going to bend over just to keep that in place for a bit so it doesn't keep popping out. Okay, now this is going to be tricky, but we've got to get this shield in there as well. Let's see if I can't sharpen this up a little bit. Ah, there we go. There we go. That looks good. Let's confirm our wiring. Okay, the same position. Okay, we had our red, and we had the green here, and the two shields, 1, 2, all soldered in position. Looks good. Let me just clean up some of that flux off there. I've had some good luck with this Tech Spray flux remover pen. Now, one thing to note, you'll notice here I have installed hardware on this potentiometer, but as this shaft is a different size than the original, you won't be able to use the existing hardware. And wouldn't you know, the new potentiometers that I got from DigiKey did not come supplied with hardware. Okay, so I had to go through my big box of junk, and I dug out some the hardware that works with this. So just beware if you do order these from DigiKey using the part numbers that I gave you, you're going to have to provide your own hardware. Now note, I did mention earlier there is somebody on eBay selling potentiometers to replace the level controls on these 2105 amps, and they were very pricey. But he did seem to have the potentiometers that had the correct shaft so that you wouldn't have to modify the knobs as I have, and hopefully those also have the correct hardware specs so that you could use the existing hardware. So yeah, it's an expensive option if he indeed is selling the exact replacements for the old ones. These I got, again, they're about $5 each. So, but yeah, I do have to make some modifications the way that I'm going about it, saving money. And it's just as good of a product, but there are some considerations that you have to be aware of if you want to go the route that I'm going. Now, I am going to put a bit of electrical tape over these terminals here just to make sure there's no contact on the bottom. I don't see any risk of shorting to the housing of the pot, but yeah, potentially down there. So let's wrap a little electrical tape underneath there as I did with the other one. All right, and just making sure that that's relatively dry after using our flux cleaner. Make sure this tape is going to stick. So just something like that. Okay. Can't hurt. Before we try to move this down here, I'm going to put a, and I did this on the other one as well, I believe, a wire tie here to hold these two cables together. Right now, to get this in position, there's going to be a lot of twisting and pulling. If we cinch these two cables together, it's going to make each individual connection that much stronger. So let's do that now. Okay, you see what I've done? And clippers. Oh, spend more time looking for stuff. There they are. Okay, on the potentiometer, there is a notch, and this was on the existing one as well. And there is a matching notch in the front panel. They do keep these pots from sliding around much out of position. So we're going to align the two slots. I'm moving this as much as possible by holding these cables and not the potentiometer, letting this go with the movement of these two cables. Again, I'm trying not to twist these connections we've just made. Guide that in place, and there we go. Actually, one thing I'm going to do, I neglected to do, let's pull this out, is I would like to just have a washer here. Not terribly necessary as there's already a good base there, but this is the way the originals were done. So let's put a washer like that in there. There we go. Okay, we're going to use this sort of star washer here. Put that on first. And now our nut. Tighten that up. I wouldn't always use an adjustable wrench, or a wrench even for that matter, to tighten the nuts on these pots. But as this face here is non-decorative, we can't see it. It's just it's an unfinished piece of metal. We don't have to worry about scratching that at all. But if this nut that holds the pots in place is on something that's exposed or that's delicate, or you don't want to mar, then I do prefer to use a socket wrench if possible. Okay, just right. Definitely don't want to over tighten things. As you can see, we have the new potentiometers installed. Everything's working fine. They seem to be tracking well together. Next thing we need to do is we need to modify the knob for the left level control to fit our new shafts. So let's get started with that. Okay, so after a bit of work, I did manage to get that insert out. We do need to drill out this hole even further to get the new insert to fit correctly. And we're going to use a 5/16 drill bit to do that. So first, let's get our knob safely into the vise. Obviously, this is very soft, delicate metal. We can't go putting our knob in there like that. I've just got some pads, just some random felt that I've used in the past to hold things in place. And just open that a little bit. Okay, and using the pads, we're going to position our knob. Okay, here we go. Okay, before we go much further, let's just double check our work. Yeah, it looks good. We have just a little further to go to reach the bottom point. And that knob is pretty hot at this point. Keeping my tears to myself here. Just use a rag to hold that in place. Can you see that? It's looking good. Looks like maybe just a tiny bit of a lip still to go. Let's continue just a little bit further. That should do the trick. Yeah, looks great. Next, we need to get this plastic shaft insert out of this other knob. We're going to use the Dremel to cut across this exterior housing, peel the metal outer layer away so that we can get at that plastic piece inside that we're looking for. Let's put that in the vise. And now we're going to use our Dremel with a cutting tool. Let's begin. Okay, so now we have a slice here and a slice here. Pull these apart. Okay, there we go. We're just actually interested in this very inner portion. So let's go to the other bench now, and I'm just going to use an X-Acto tool to cut away this outer layer here and get to the part that we really need. I'm going to use my cutters now to just cut away this outer junk here. And just clean up the edges a little bit so it fits into the knob well. Here's our knob. Let's check our fit. There you go. Okay, and now we're just going to cut off this bottom portion here. There we go. Now I'm just going to permanently glue these inserts to the knob. So what I've done is I've put an insert on each of the shafts, and I'm going to get a little super glue, and we're just going to put a couple drops of super glue around the plastic inserts. Now for this one. Take our first knob, slide that in place. Both of the potentiometers are in their closed position, the most counterclockwise position. So I'm going to turn these, I'm looking from above, until this notch is exactly in the center. And do the same now for this one. And we'll just let that sit for a couple of hours to make sure the bond is solid. Then we'll try removing the knobs just to make sure that there's no movement anymore, but that should do the trick. That wraps up part 6 of the MC2105 restoration series. Stay tuned for part 7, where we'll rewire the headphone jack and test the voltages in the amp circuits. To stay updated, subscribe and click the bell. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I'll see you soon.